Today is December 10th, 2012. My name is Teresa Beer Larson, and I'm in the home of Mary Lou, Dahl, Fritsch, Wheeler. Thank you for welcoming me in this holiday time period.
It is very good to have you here.
Do I have your permission to record your voice in your picture?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Please tell me your birth date.
Oh, dear. 10/3/26, 1926. So I've been around a while.
You spent most of your childhood in Ames, and that's what we'd like to talk about today. But you actually were not born in Ames. Where were you born?
I was born at Iowa Lutheran Hospital in Des Moines because my mother was a nurse there and had been working there for 8 years before she married my dad.
So she had her child born where she worked.
Uh-huh.
But did she continue working?
In fact, she got a special discount in those days. I think I probably cost like $35 or something. And they stayed in the hospital for a week.
Did your mother continue working as a nurse?
No. That was verboten.
So you came back to Ames then as an infant.
Mm-hmm.
And where are you in the birth order of your family?
I was the oldest, and I have one sister who was born in 1932.
It's always good to think about what your earliest memory is. Can you tell me what your earliest memory might have been?
Well, yes. I was 3 years old, and I had my tonsils out. And, of course, I had to go to Iowa Lutheran Hospital to have this done. And I remember one of the things that was naughty that I did was I got out of bed and went out to the fountain to get myself a drink of water because I was thirsty. The other thing I remember is that my aunt had hers taken out the same day.
So, returning to Ames and activities in Ames, probably one of the next things you would have remembered would have been a circle of friends. So first of all, tell me where your home was in Ames.
Well, I actually lived right across from where the City Hall is now. That was the high school that I graduated from, and ours was the first class to graduate from Ames High, that location. And I also remember living there as a little child, and the original school, and I don't know when it was built, but it was in the center of that big lot.
So your original home was on 5th Street, then I take it. And that house doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It's just gone.
Well, actually, my parents lived in the little bungalow. Wilson Avenue used to go through, and we had a little house on the corner, and then we moved to the house next door, so that was a big move.
Where did children who were living in that area play? What did they do for fun? Little children.
Well, one of the things was that I learned to ride a bicycle, and my dad had the Packard dealership, and my bicycle was a Packard. It had a label on the front, and it was very unusual even in those days, and I've never seen one since, but instead of being the big 26-inch wheel that we're used to now, or what they used to call a sidewalk bike, it was yay big, and I was being given it for Christmas, and my father couldn't wait to give it to me, so he let me learn to ride in the tire shop. And my mother was very upset because she didn't think that was timed the way she wanted it.
Did other children have bicycles? Maybe not Packards.
Well, actually, we didn't have training wheels in those days, and the bicycle that I had was such a unique size that we figured over 100 kids learned to ride on that particular bicycle.
Can you tell me a little bit about your father's job and his business on Main Street? I know you were a child and maybe you didn't visit it a lot, but surely you probably have some memories of what it was like to go down to Main Street and visit your dad at his place of work.
Well, sometimes I would get to walk with him to work because we were close enough, and that was fun. And one of the things that they had was a vulcanizing machine, and I guess it repaired, I don't know, but I remember being impressed at the time. And the other thing that I remember is that we were a product of the Depression, and as a child I was not really affected, but I have a sample left of one of the tires that he cut up to use as a rubber band.
Well, I would like to see an example of that, and so let's see that.
Okay.
And Mary Lou, can you describe to me what you have in your hands?
This is actually a treasure. It is a rubber band that really works. It's been around since my father cut it, and he would use it around cigar boxes where he would store little treasures, and each of my daughters has one as a souvenir.
And it came from the 1930s in your dad's business.
Right.
Can you remember other activities on Main Street as a child?
Well, one of the restaurants that everybody frequented was called the Wayside Inn, and it was directly across the street from my father's business. And during the Depression, when people would, they were hungry, and he didn't want anybody to be hungry. So he had an arrangement with the owner of the Wayside Cafe that he would pay for whatever anybody wanted. And they just were to say that, please charge this to John Dahl, and he would take care of it. And my mother would also take care of we had a back porch, and they knew where to go, and they would knock on the door, and we called them bums, but I felt sorry for them even then, and I often wonder what happened to them.
But they were provided for. There were ways
Right.
that people helped them.
Right.
And also moving, and actually the Wayside Inn and your dad's business were towards the west end of Main Street.
412 Main.
Right. So if we kind of go towards the east, can you think of places where your mom would shop or you would go?
Well, there was J.C. Penney's, which was a big store, and the Rainbow Cafe was there, and Emmerhoff's shoe store. In fact, I remember going to Emmerhoff's shoe store and buying my patent leather shoes for 8th grade dance class. And and also there were some drugstores, Dixon drugstore, and we would go there for malted milks, and they cost us 20 cents. I think they maybe were 15 to begin with. And then Moore's Dairy was also in my memory.
area.
I'm not sure when it was built, but I know it was there when we were in high school. And again, we would go there for ice cream after school.
Well, those are good Main Street memories. And if you happen to think of some other things while we chat, you can chime in. But I
Okay.
wanted to kind of return more to your neighborhood and children. You went to Roosevelt School.
I did.
And Roosevelt School has a long-standing and wonderful history in our community.
Well, I had to walk to school. We came home for lunch. We did not have a hot lunch program. And I would have probably been 9 blocks to school. So I got a little exercise to come home for lunch. And the other thing that I remember was that we had a maypole dance. So the first day of May, we had a pole in the front yard of the school, and each of us and we had flowers and music, and that's it was very important.
And as a child, you had said, you were growing up through the Depression, but life was simple. It was not like you felt any particular deprivation.
Not at all. Mm-hmm. But of course, I was blessed too. So I didn't. We weren't poor, but there were many who were, and
But you remember, it sounds like your mom and your dad economized, for example.
Oh, yes. And I still don't like waste. I always turn out the lights when I leave the room.
Now, your mom believed in good health, and you had a lot of fresh vegetables and whatnot for lunch. And,
Yes.
And tell me about grocery shopping.
Okay, I can remember sitting in the dining room, actually, because that's where the phone was. And I can remember her calling, and there were 2 grocery stores. One was, we called the 9th Street Grocery, and it was slightly east of Grand. And it was an old-fashioned store, and I remember shopping there as well as having her call. But she would call on the phone and request the best juiced oranges, and they would deliver them. And this young man was on a motorcycle, and he would come to the house and deliver our groceries for the week, or well, I don't remember how long they lasted, but.
And where, after school then, what were the areas of downtown and near Roosevelt where you and your fellow playmates would hang out, and what would you do?
Well, when I was in high school, of course, I could just fall out of bed and be there, so that was kind of neat. And my friends would ride their bikes to my house, and then we would ride to school together. And it was, and then when I was really little, I can remember riding my tricycle, and the sidewalk wasn't concrete, it was bricks.
And I think we have a picture of you sometimes playing in what was called the Pine Forest off of 13th Street.
Oh, yes.
Should we look at that?
Let's do.
Mary Lou, can you tell me about this snapshot?
We used to have what we called Tarzan days, and we would go up to what we called the Pine Forest, which is located between the new high school and the new swimming pool. And it had a nice hill, and I can't remember, but each of us would have a certain branch that was ours, and we called the day our Tarzan Day. We would take a picnic and spend the whole day, and innocent fun. So it was fun.
And probably maybe junior high-ish, that kind of age?
Yes, I would think that's when it was.
And there's some other pictures of having fun, and we'll get those and talk about them next. Mary Lou, you're holding a picture of a really fun time, something that was memorable for you here.
Yes, it was really neat because I was chosen from my group, my Campfire group, to be the representative of the whole Campfire. All the groups took over the city for a day.
So that's the Ames city.
In Ames. And I was the chief of the fire department, and you can tell me because I have my hat on. And the other person that is in this picture is Polly Pride, and she was, I'm not sure if she was the mayor or who, but I forgot, I should call and ask her, I guess.
A part of every childhood is birthday parties.
Yes, my mother and I both appreciated it, and there were certain things that she did every year, and I think I probably am about 7 in this picture, and this would be our backyard with that trellis in the background. When I was going to be 12 years old, my mother announced that I was too old for birthday parties, and so I think we had a family dinner planned, but she surprised me, and all of my friends appeared, and we had a wonderful time.
And where was your house when you were 12 years old?
Okay, I was, again, right across from what is now City Hall.
Okay.
They had closed off Wilson Avenue.
Okay. And can you tell me about this picture?
It must have been a treasure. I see that I have it autographed by a few of the guys, and this was our junior high team, and you can see our principal, Miss Schmidt, and also a very favorite person was Everett Ritland. We called him Rit, and he lasted for many years.
And sometimes the young men would get a letter, and I think you have a letter from Central to reveal. Mary Lou, this picture caught my eye because there's a house in the background that's exactly like the house in one of your slumber party pictures or your birthday party pictures, but it also caught my eye because of this interesting horse that these young men are sitting on.
That horse was a very special gift from my grandfather. He bought a merry-go-round and had rockers put on each of the horses and then gave one to each family. And that lasted for many years. The problem was it was outside, and I think it's gone forever now.
We've talked a little bit about youth activities as a young person, but we haven't talked too much about high school. And this is a lovely photograph of some girls in high school. What are they doing?
We actually had potluck dinners, and this, I had forgotten about it, but the girl reserves in high school would have these meetings on occasion, and we would have big sisters to kind of welcome the new. And that time it was sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school, and this was an example of that.
You actually rode tricycles with a kind of a famous person, but let's say who this fellow is first.
His name is Bob Chase, and he and I rode tricycles together and learned to ride on that other bike, and it seemed like we were kind of naughty because he was the subject of child development research, and evidently we did some naughty things, including getting into a lady's house that wasn't home, and she was very unhappy with us, and I had forgotten a lot of this, but he was the MC for our class reunion, and when he came back, he reminded me of these things that we had done.
You both turned out so well. Let's look at a picture of him a little bit later. And here's Bob Chase in respectable times and being very successful as a broadcaster.
Yes, a lot of people from St. Louis recognize his voice, and he had a beautiful speaking voice, and of course he was the MC for our class reunions, and actually became a very handsome young man.
Mary Lou, we were talking a little bit about downtown businesses at one point, and you reminded me about a story of collegiate manufacturing, and that was very big business and
Yes.
pivotal for you in some ways.
Well, it was the custom to go down to collegiate manufacturing and pick out the fabric that you liked, and they would make a snowsuit for you.
What kind of fabric was it?
It was 100% wool, and it was itchy. But I remember picking them out, and one in particular had navy blue pants and a plaid jacket. It was really rather pretty, but it wasn't lined, but it was warm.
Any other stories about downtown before we close, or anything you would like to tell me that I haven't asked you?
Did I mention Emmerhouse?
That I think you said you went to get some shiny shoes there
Yeah,
once.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we started this conversation talking about your mom, who was a nurse at Iowa Lutheran, and we have a picture of her, and let's see one of that. So here's a picture of your mom as a young professional.
Her name was Martha, and they called her Maddie, but she didn't like that, so she switched back to Martha.
Here's a picture of your mom with her nurse's cap later in life. Can you tell me about this picture?
This was a neat thing because my son-in-law, Dick Spoth, and his wife, Christy, my daughter, he was working at Iowa Lutheran in Des Moines, and they were early married, and he invited my mother to come down, and they interviewed her, and she just we all enjoyed the day. And so she saw her own picture on the wall in her class, and that was neat.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Mary Lou, for sharing time with us and talking about your memories of Ames. It's been my pleasure.
It's been mine. Thank you.